Thank you. I'm Father Mitch Pacwa, and welcome to EWTN Live. We're bringing guests from all over the world. And we'll be talking tonight with Bill Donohue of the Catholic League about solving some of our cultural problems with common sense Catholicism. But before we talk to Bill, we would like to talk briefly about the role that EWTN News plays in bringing that common sense Catholicism to bear on the culture and on the importance of Catholic journalism. So we want to welcome our EWTN senior news contributor, Dr. Matthew Bunson. Matthew, how did you get to be senior? Just getting old?
At a certain point that people start referring to you as senior.
Yeah. I understand. It happens. Believe me, I understood it before you did.
Well, it's like that first day in your life when someone refers to you as sir.
Yeah.
It's not a good day. Yeah.
In the South, we take it normally. What do you got for news, though, for us? What's going on?
Well, a couple things. The EWTN News, as we've talked, has expanded to Africa with Aussie Africa. A lot of the growth, though, that is happening, and some of the most interesting growth for somebody who's within EWTN News is happening sort of internally. And one of the things that we've been focusing on for a while now is developing that collaboration, cooperation, and communication among all of our different entities. But it all really has just one objective, and that is to make sure that all of us are authentic, professional Catholic journalists. Note, though, the use of the term Catholic journalist.
I was in our Rome office making programs back in the spring, and something that was very impressive is that the whole office was there to take classes on Thomistic philosophy and how to understand the nature of truth.
That's right.
As a component for doing journalism. They want to know what's true because it's true, and they're studying the nature of truth. This is something that a few other networks could learn from.
I'm guessing almost all of them outside of EWTN. But you're right, it's this focus on the Catholic faith, on who we are as Catholics, now engaging in the field of journalism. And I always go back to that great document from the Second Vatican Council, Inter Mirifica, which called on Catholics to embrace all the means of social communications, but to do it professionally. And for the press, to have that single-minded focus of professionalism, but making sure that we are informing and forming Catholics to live in culture.
Yeah.
And that is one of the credos that we take at EWTN News very seriously.
Yep. Thank you for giving us that update about some of the things coming up and the approach of our news. And we're going to be back in just a few minutes with the president of the Catholic League, Bill Donohue, talking about this Catholic common sense. It's going to be fun, so please stay with us. Thank you and welcome back. Our guest tonight is convinced that many of the problems that we are currently experiencing in our country are not political, nor are they economic in nature. The problem is that American society is in trouble because of our social fabric coming apart and our culture is in a state of decline. Furthermore, he says that what's driving this cultural decline is a collapse of common sense. So he lays out some answers to our ills in his new book, Common Sense Catholicism, How to Resolve Our Cultural Crisis. Please welcome the president of the Catholic League for Religious and Civil Rights and a friend of mine, Mr. Bill Donohue.
Thank you, sir.
Bill,
Thank you.
it is so good
to
have you here.
Good.
Well, it's delighted. And you live up in New York. That's where the Catholic League is. Right. And you've been doing yeoman's work with that for years. But now you're writing. You know, we're both getting into that mature, reflective stage where we may not be as active as we once were, but we have some ideas. Well, so I appreciate this new book of yours.
Well, you know, I spent a good part of my life before I took this job in education, and even after. I mean, I've taught every grade from the second grade through graduate school, including newly minted PhDs from around the world at New York University, the Fulbright. Now, I can tell you there's a lot of good intellectuals out there, a lot of good professors.
There are.
However, we have a disproportionate number today, particularly in the social sciences and humanities, not exclusive to them, that are basically dysfunctional in their own lives, and their ideas for our society are dysfunctional as well. It comes down to basically this. If you don't believe in human nature, and if you don't believe in nature's God, then every piece of advice you're going to give is going to be wrong. Wrong to the people, the legislators, wrong to the culture, wrong to public policy makers, because it's simply madness. Of course there's such a thing as human nature. Of course there's such a thing as God. But the professors, so many of them, they think that they're God, you see, that we're just a social construction, as they like to say. We're like a piece of putty. We can just mold them any way we want. There's no difference between a man and a woman. A man can become a woman can become a man. A woman is pregnant, is not carrying a child. They're living in a world of fiction.
Well,
this is delusional.
They even are saying in recent news this year that men are able to have babies.
Yeah, that's right. And I used to be a giraffe in my last life, you know. I mean, this is the kind of madness that is taught. And it all comes down to this. As I've said over and over, some of the stupidest people I've ever met teach in colleges. It's sad to say that. This book, Cardinal Dolan said to me recently, is this, you trying to get the intellectuals to change? I said, I've given up on some of the ones who are that far gone. This book is meant for the listening audience, for the public, and you don't have to be Catholic. I want people not to second guess themselves. If you have a good sense of common sense and you understand that there is such a thing as nature and nature's God, don't be deluded, don't be intellectually seduced by these crazy ideas that come out of the colleges and universities, because they've done a lot of damage. And what I do in the book is I look at freedom, equality, and fraternity. Those were the goals of the French Revolution.
Right.
They didn't get them right because they didn't believe in human nature or God. And we're not getting it right either. The Catholic Church, however, in terms of its teachings, is a repository of wisdom. Take a look at what the Catholic Church teaches about freedom, compare it to the dominant culture, or on equality, or on fraternity, or a sense of community. We have a mature, common sense understanding of the three. Not true in the dominant culture.
Well, it's something we say down here in the South, that some people get educated beyond their intelligence. And this kind of thing goes on with these folks, and it shows up in they're not having, again, what we call down here, they don't have walking around sense.
Right.
The kind of sense you need to get through life. But one of the points that you make in the book, when you say that these are the stupidest people,
right.
You distinguish very importantly from those who don't have an education and may not know a lot of facts. That's not what you mean by stupid at all.
I give the example, if you don't know how to make a hard-boiled egg, that doesn't make you stupid. It just means you don't know how to do it.
That's right.
All you need is the knowledge. I'm talking about a lack of common sense.
Yeah.
That's a very different quality altogether. You can't teach common sense too easily. If you read the Catholic Church's teachings, social teachings in particular, you'll understand what is commonsensical, because we don't work against nature. The Catholic Church's teachings actually mesh and are in harmony with the limitations of the human condition. You know what I do, Father, in the book? I look at the work of Donald Brown as an anthropologist. He detailed over 300 human universals or characteristics, attributes, which are true in all societies in history. Now, why would you want to create a culture which works against that? Take you one very simple example. For example, men are stronger than women. That doesn't make them better, but they are more aggressive. Why? It's called testosterone. We have more of it than they do. When you have the president of Smith College today in 2019 saying that motherhood is a cultural invention, that's a fiction. Motherhood is a reflection of nature. The culture ratifies nature, but they don't want to teach that in the schools because they don't want to believe in nature. They think everything is a matter of like we're all like silly putty. That's what's really wrong. That's the kind of madness that leads to the kind of conclusions that they come to in our society today.
Well, it was similar to the article back, I think, on Time magazine, cover article. And the cover article was, boys and girls are different. And the reason that that was on the front cover is for them, that was news.
Yeah. It is just like it's breaking news, a big shocker. To show you how far gone these people are, there's a mathematician at NYU a number of years ago, and there's been more recent people have done the same thing. He is not a man on the conservative side, he's a man on the left. But he knows that some of the ideas entertained in the academy and higher education are really delusional. So he decided to write an article for a refereed scientific journal. And he said that there's no such thing as gravity in the real world. It's a social construction. In other words, made up by people in different societies. Mm-hmm. Now, he knows that that's nonsense. We should know it's nonsense. Do you know that it was published? And then after it was published, he just called these people stupid. They're frauds. That it's so easy to pass this nonsense on and get it published. They were furious with him for making them look so stupid. But that's exactly what passes these days, because they don't want to believe that there's anything fixed, because they want to change everything.
See, I want our folks to understand this. Now, think about it. There's a scholar who makes fun of them. He's doing a joke on them, saying that there is no such thing as gravity. It is a social construct. Mm-hmm. In other words, society makes up gravity.
Right.
And they publish it as something serious.
As something scientific.
Scientific. Yeah. And so you say, would any of you like to drop from an airplane? And show the social. I mean,
I know.
This is what you are talking about in terms of having no common sense.
Exactly.
And living in a world where everything is totally possible. They are Oz.
They really are.
The Wizard of Oz, creating this world. And sometimes trying to scare us like Oz with, flashes of thunder and explosion. It's goofy.
And they tell us, too, that in terms of freedom, see, the Catholic Church teaches that freedom is the right to do what you ought to do. That's in the Catechism. It's what St. John Paul II said. Just think about that. Freedom is the right to do what you ought to do. That's about the other. It's not about me. Mm-hmm. It's about a responsibility and duty toward others. Now, you say that today on the college campuses. What? Freedom means that I have to do right by somebody else? That's heresy. Freedom is the right to do whatever I want to do. It's my body. I can do whatever I want to do, and I can sleep with whoever I want. I can take whatever drugs I want to do. It's my right. And look at how happy these people are. Don't they realize that this is sudden death? And I'm not talking about in basketball overtime. This is madness. When people live a life of delinquency, of moral delinquency, of recklessness, I don't care whether it's money, sex, drugs, food, alcohol. Once you get beyond that, once you get promiscuous or greedy, you're gonna suffer, because you can't beat nature. Nature rebels. But see, again, we're back to this, though, Father. They don't believe in nature. They don't think there's any such thing as human nature.
Well, see, an example, just so folks understand, a good example that occurred in your own city of New York.
Right.
In May of 2019, there was an article published in the New York Times saying that conservative religious people are happier than the more liberal religious people, and liberal religious people are happier than unbelievers or atheists. Right. Now, that was just a scientific study, and it's been the same result has been shown in studies going back through the 80s.
You know,
but here's the point that it gets to support you.
Yeah.
The reaction of the readers at the New York Times was outrage.
Yeah.
How dare you say that conservative religious people are happier? Whereas the ones with common sense then said, maybe I ought to go to church to look for a spouse and not to a bar.
Well,
that's the common sense reaction to that. Fury and anger is the reaction of the stupid.
Well, they're angry also because they know it's true. You don't get angry about something unless you know internally that it's true. A few years ago, I wrote a book called The Catholic Advantage, and I detailed this myself. And what is interesting, we're not only happier, we live longer, and we're the most generous and charitable people. That's why in this book, Common Sense Catholicism, I talk about the necessity in terms of the chapter on tradition, the 2 chapters there, of tradition and religion and fraternity. If you tear down religion, what have you left with? We are the most charitable of all people. Yep. The people on the left who don't believe in anything, their idea of helping the poor is for the government to write a check. Our idea is ourselves to help. I believe in Mother Teresa got it right. Mm-hmm. If you want to help the poor, do something yourself. Don't try to save the world. Try to save one person. And I saw this when I was working, going for my doctorate at NYU. I would ask the students in the class, very much in favor of the poor. I said, well, I work in Spanish Harlem with the Black and Puerto Rican kids, and I'm glad to see you're concerned about the poor. And a lot of them could use some remedial help. Will you come with me on a Saturday morning to help them? Absolute dead silence. No, that's for somebody else to do. This is cheap talk. Of course, people who are religious are happier. We also give more in terms of volunteer. We give more blood and every other index on this. But it makes the secularists angry when they hear this kind of thing, because they are not the givers. The people down here in the South, okay, down South, I've looked at it compared to the Northeast. The Northeast has the big money, and they're much more liberal. They give less in their income per capita than the people down South. I think Mississippi leads the country, and Massachusetts is the worst. It is striking.
And Mississippi is usually the poorest state in the union in terms of its economic base. It's, you know, the cotton depleted the soil and a lot of that. But, you know, this is something that I've noticed, that folks who are unbelievers and to the left tend to donate their money to political campaigns before they will give it directly to the poor. And they say, I want to have systemic change and not charity. Some of them don't believe in charity. It's a right, and I will change society to get you your rights.
Because charity pinches the individual. That means it comes out of my pocket. Systemic change means I don't have to get involved. It means government redistribution. The mayor of New York City recently said that there's plenty of money to pay for all these programs. He said it's just that the money's in the wrong hands. So he knows whose hands it should be in. Mm-hmm. So once you give the poor all the money from the rich, listen, don't take 70% like Alexandria Cortez does, and people take 100%. Don't be so generous with take it all. Take all the money from the rich and give it to the bottom. Now, after a couple of fast weekends in Atlantic City and Las Vegas, you're right back to where you started from. So who do you fleece next? An economy grows because of the engines in the marketplace where you can invest money, where you can be a success. So if a rich man invests in something which is a loser, he loses, but we don't lose. If he wins, we all win. So, but this again takes common sense. But no, they live in this dream Marxist world. The problem with so many of the professors is their ideas work beautifully on the blackboard. Once they leave the classroom, look out. Too bad we couldn't incubate them, because these ideas are pernicious to get out there.
It's something I'll never forget, meeting with a very secular gentleman. He was a judge at a court in the northwestern state, Washington State. And he said, I've got a great idea. We can just get all these people to help each other and do it. And he came up with this secular program to help. And I asked him this question: if we can't get men to stay faithful to the woman with whom they have a child, and stay faithful to that child to care for it into that child's adulthood, what makes you think you can get strangers to do this?
That's right.
And that had not occurred to him. And this is just something that is common sense.
So when I hear these people say, we should all love the world, why don't you just begin with your own family? Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, don't worry about loving the entire world. And they want to bring out greater equality. Okay, let's bring out better equality. Their idea of a greater equality is that we got to fix the schools, okay? Let me tell you something. I've studied this thing for years. It's in the book. The most important determinant of educational achievement, I'm talking about young people now, it's not the school, it's the family. It's not what happens in the school, it's what happens before you get to school.
Yep.
And it's not to say the school doesn't matter. I would never say that. But this idea that we can just spend money, we did that in New York City. Mayor de Blasio said, I disagree with Mayor Bloomberg, that was the predecessor. Bloomberg said, if these public schools continue to fail, I'm going to cut their funding. De Blasio comes in, he said that was the wrong approach. They need more money. So I'm going to take the 94 worst public schools in New York City, mostly in black Puerto Rican neighborhoods, and I'm going to give them more money, because then they'll do better. 3 years later, 91 out of the 94 schools failed to meet the benchmark, okay? Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook said the same thing. All it takes is money, all right? So I'm going to raise $200 million and give it to Newark, which has lousy public schools. I'm going to put up $100 million, 50% of it of my own money, and I'm going to raise the $100 million. He was good on that. And he went on Oprah, and everybody's happy, and it's wonderful. Guess what happened? It was a total bomb.
Yep.
Because the teachers' unions came in and took 40%, said, well, you owe us some back pay, so let's grab that. The other guy said, I get $1,000 an hour to be a consultant. Yeah, that worked out real well.
Well, there was a school in Chicago. It's very well known, Senn School. It had been a Jewish neighborhood. It was the #1 school in the city when the Jewish community lived around it. Neighborhood changed. They did well, and they moved to the suburbs.
Right.
Next group that came through were poor whites, poor blacks, and poor Native Americans, and their families were not intact at all.
Right.
The families had collapsed for all three of those communities, and Senn became one of the lowest schools.
Right.
Next group comes in are Hmong, Cambodian, and Vietnamese people. Their families are intact. They don't have televisions. They sit around the table, and the family together studies, and the older kids help the younger kids. And the parents who don't know English and are immigrants came on boats with the clothes on their back, had nothing. They brought it back up to the #1 school in the city, because the family was more important than any other factor. When it was the Jewish community or the Southeast Asian community, family strength was there. And in study after study,
Right.
parents who do homework with their kids are the #1 factor in good grades. So what they said in England, well, that's not fair. So parents, don't read to your kids.
That solves a lot of problems, yeah. Lack of common sense.
This is where you say, use what's sensible.
Well, look what we're doing today. You mentioned the Asians. I mean, they're doing very well because, yes, there's a father there, not just the mother. And that's what it comes down to, one word, fatherhood. If you don't have fathers in the neighborhood, forget about it.
That's right.
And look what's happening in New York City. You have some elite public schools, high schools. Now, disproportionately Asian and Jewish. I don't care. I happen to be an Irish Catholic. If these are the best students, they're the best students. Now they want to try and stop that because we don't have enough people of color. Oh, that's interesting because I thought Asians were people of color, but they don't seem to count that now. They're too white because they've done well. So we discriminate against the Asians in New York City. Asians
And
are
at Harvard.
At Harvard University. They're suing Harvard University. I hope they win on this because they say we have too many of them. How do you help people? Look, I worked, Father, in Spanish Harlem with the black and Puerto Rican kids. I saw what I could do with these kids whom the public schools wrote off literally across the street from me on 104th Street between 1st and 2nd Avenue. My kids all did very well, and they didn't have a whole lot of money. They were just like anybody else in the neighborhood. But we had the emphasis on reading, writing, arithmetic, discipline, and the like. There was none of that across the street at the public school. It can be done, but the way to help the people is not to take the top and bring them down. It's to take the bottom and move them up.
And see, this was the theory of Thomas Dewey.
Yes,
that
that's
when
right.
he brought that into the public school, he was the one who was against phonetics because it helped people too much. We want everybody to be the same. And the issue that I think that as I'm reading your book is that we as Catholics who have this treasure of Catholic wisdom need to bring that into our culture so that where we don't see dads and moms staying together or with their kids. Because again, we both know a lot of grandparents are ending up raising kids in their 60s and 70s because the parents of the kids are on drugs and other problems. So we need to be there to bring that wisdom and walking around sense. You don't have to have a PhD.
No.
You have to have a PhD in life.
And hopefully, if you have a PhD, unfortunately, you're going to wind up like the stupid people that I talk about in the book. And we're talking about education. We got to remember, too, we should stop what's going on in this country, and it begins at the very young grades, goes right up through the graduate school. Stop thrashing Western civilization. That's an attack on Christianity. We're the ones who had the greatest art, architecture. We're the ones who said that men and women are equal in the eyes of God and have equal dignity and should be treated equally before the law. We're the ones who came up with the idea of liberty. Western civilization grounded in Christianity. And what do we have?
And the church invented the university,
that's right.
the hospital,
exactly.
the orphanage, the mentalist institution.
And what are we doing? In the name of multiculturalism, we're thrashing it. Why should we emulate cultures which have contributed practically nothing? I can tell you, a number of years ago, I was at Carnegie Mellon University, a very distinguished engineering school, and beyond engineering. They have a great artistic community there as well. Carnegie Mellon University students, they asked me to come in and talk to the PhD students, and I did. And I gave a talk about America, and they talked to me. They said, well, you sound like you're very pro-American. I said, yeah, I am. I'm a veteran, and I know about American history. I'm very proud to be American. I said, I guess you're not, though, right? I'm picking that up. Well, we have a lot of things wrong. I said, okay, do you want to make a laundry list right now of America versus the countries in Africa and Latin America and the Muslim nations and in China and Russia? Do you want to go through all this on how they treat men and women? Where do you think you're going with this? And I said, so what you're saying is, and they got a little nervous. They said, I said, you believe, I'm meaning the students, I said, you believe that all cultures are basically equal. They said, that's right, and we shouldn't, and I said, so we shouldn't emulate one over the other. Now you get my point. I said, so it's a matter of different strokes for different folks. Yes, that's true. I said, I think I understand what you're talking about. And then I hit them. And then the smile went off their face. I said, so in other words, in this country, we put pizzas into ovens, and in Hitler's Germany, they put Jews into ovens. That's different strokes for different folks. And they stopped, and they stared, and they got nervous, and they stuttered, and they said, well, no, that's not what we mean. I said, no, excuse me. That's exactly what you mean. You better go back to first principles, because what I just said is a logical interpretation of where you started from, that all cultures are equal. They are not equal. Some of them are savage cultures. Our country is the country that people are dying to come into. People are crashing the borders of America trying to come in. And remember when we had West Germany and East Germany, How many people from West Germany jumped over the wall to get to East Germany? Didn't they jump one way? Haven't you guys figured this out yet?
They don't know.
No, they don't know.
We have to take a break.
Right. I need to take a break.
Yeah, but we'll be back in a minute. Again, the Catholic League, by the way, is a great place to go. You can go to catholicleague.org, or you can also go to facebook.com/Catholic League and find out more about what they're doing. But we'll get to some of that later, but we'll be back in a couple minutes with more Bill, so please stay with us. All right. Again, we're with Bill Donohue, and his book is called Common Sense Catholicism, How to Resolve Our Cultural Crisis. It is item 42091 at EWTN RC, and you get other books by Bill Donohue there, such as Why Catholicism Matters, another great book, How Catholic Virtues Can Reshape Society in the 21st Century, and The Catholic Advantage, Why Health, Happiness, and Heaven Await the Faithful. These are good books. Common sense. You're using your brain. I bet you your mother would be proud.
Well, you
Finally,
know,
right?
Yeah, it's funny because I mentioned to some people that I had a kind of a liberal flirtation when I was in the Air Force, when I was around 19, 20, 21, 22 years of age. And I was caught up in the Black Civil Rights Movement, and I really was steeped into it. And I got kind of angry about what was going on in the country. I went back to, I went to New York University when I got out of the Air Force. I was 4 years in California in the late 60s during the Vietnam War period. And I got back, I went to school, and I looked at the professors and the students, and I saw so much of the hypocrisy. It really began to bother me. And I think it's coming from like a blue-collar background, because I was largely raised by my mother and her mother and father. My father abandoned my sister and I when I was just a child. And so I came from kind of a blue-collarish background, and that tends to ground you in experience, and not to trust every delusional idea that's, you know, the professor is great about creating utopia on the blackboard, which, by the way, means nowhere, but they should figure that out. Because you see, like I say, they're too smart to believe in God, so they are God. And they're telling the students what can be done, and they have all these ideas. And I'm concerned that a lot of young people today, they come home from Thanksgiving, the break from the school and Christmas, and they begin to spout some of the crazy ideas they've heard in the classroom. Cardinal Dolan said to me recently, is this book written by you, Bill, to affect other professors? I said, not really. I've given up on the hardcore ones, okay? They're impervious to reason. They're irrational people. I certainly hope to reach a lot of other professors, but I want to affect the public. I want people to trust their gut. If your gut tells you this is not commonsensical, go with it. Don't believe all this nonsense that's being taught in the name of education, in higher education. Now, I'm only talking about the wacko stuff here. I'm not talking about people who are, you know, offering good ideas and in good philosophy classes. I'm talking about people who reject the idea of God, reject the idea of human nature. Be careful of what they teach.
One of the most basic problems in our society is the relativism that permeates, so that you say, I have my truth and you have your truth, and I'll let you be with your truth, you let me be with mine, until we come to a crossroads. And when we come to the crossroads and we're both at the same time, who goes first?
Well, that's just it.
And there's no principle. If I have my truth and you have your truth, the only way to decide as to who goes first is which one is driving a Yugo and which one is driving an SUV.
Right, now you're down
or
to power.
Humvee.
You're down to power.
And that's all that relativists have. They don't have truth in between them.
No, they don't.
And they can't discuss on the basis of truth because they don't believe it exists. So all they have is power, and that's the basis of all this whininess,
right,
the yelling, the screaming. It's a power play because they can't believe in truth and give you ideas.
And you know, one of the, to punctuate what you've just said, Father, one of the things I recount in the book is a brilliant commencement speech by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, the great Abraham Lincoln of the Soviet Union, the guy who stood up to the Gestapo.
No, the KGB,
Gulag.
Yeah, the KGB.
KGB, yeah.
Gestapo was Germany.
Right, exactly. He's very similar to the way they acted, though, didn't they?
Yes.
They perfected genocide. Well, he came to Harvard University in '78, and he gave the commencement address. And the students expected him to go on about the Soviet Union, how bad communism was, and he didn't do that. Instead, he started to criticize Western civilization, including the United States.
That.
And he said, listen, yes, the despots in the Soviet Union, the totalitarian despots that we had under the communists, crushed religion. And we had the czars before them, who were a lot better than what Stalin gave us. But still, in your country, you've abused freedom. And this is not what I would call a free society. You've become morally destitute in our society today. That's not something to celebrate.
That's right.
As Madison said, you know, freedom is supposed to advance happiness. And Madison also understood that you can lose freedom by the abuses of freedom, not just simply by some tyrant. We always think that freedom is going to be lost by a tyrant. Yes, it can be. Historically, it can be. But it also can be lost when you have moral anarchy, because you know what happens, and we're getting close to that, unfortunately, in this country today. When you have no society will put up with total anarchy. They will demand government to step in the name of rights and instill order. Now, I would rather order in society be done by self-policing, not the police. If you have a free society, you have to have self-governing individuals. And if we don't govern ourselves, which means exercising a measure of restraint, then the police are going to come in and do the order for us. That's where we're going today. Look at Chicago. Why are there so much killings in Chicago? Because there's no families left. And the police have to come in there because the father's not there to take care of policing his own child. I mean, it has nothing to do with race. It has everything to do with the family. And again, we kind of resolve these problems by using the long solution.
You see this. I've done some prison work, and I consider it a great privilege. I love the inmates. They're really, in their own way, they're really some impressive people. But here's one of the things that is common, is not the racial issue, but the common factor is the lack of fathers. 80% of the black guys in prison, 80% of the white guys in prison, and 80% of the Hispanic guys are born to unmarried parents. That's the common factor. So, and of the other 20%, the majority of them come from families that were divorced. It's a tiny percent that, less than 5%, I think it's closer to 2 or so, that come from intact families. This should, and when it does come from intact families, it's because of drug abuse. You look at that, and we need to use common sense to say, oh, family matters. Having the dad in the home is a huge, and having mom and dad live together is the #1 factor in people not going to prison. And you see, even in the group I just listed, what group was I missing? The Asians.
Right.
Because this is not their temptation. And they don't go to prison as much.
We have one of the cardinal virtues, of course, is temperance. Now, I'm going to isolate one virtue there, self-discipline.
Yep.
All right? Self-discipline affects how you conduct yourself sexually, financially, in school. It affects the work ethic.
Yep.
It affects, can you do homework? Now, a lot of Chinese, they'll teach their children violin, not because they expect them to be violinists, because the idea of getting to be self-disciplined, or it's rote. It's important that you concentrate on one thing. We have a society, people, I live in New York City, every day, usually a gal, walks into me, and I'm a big guy, because she's got the headphones on, and she's looking at her phone, she's walking the street. We want to be entertained 24/7. The Asians are doing the violin not to be entertained, but to practice self-discipline. And when the Korean grocers make sure that their kid works for them, he doesn't have to pay minimum wage because it doesn't apply to a family worker. But that kid's getting a work ethic. He's not being exploited.
Exactly.
That kid's going to do well in school, and that shows up in every way. Now, again, this is common sense. We keep thinking, again, the way to solve the problems in the schools is to write a check, some idea like that. That's very good for the professors, by the way. They can get their jobs, don't they? Because we think that somehow they're going to correct it. But these things are all tied together. And some people have said to me, "Well, Bill, you're telling me the Catholic Church has the answers." I said, "That's exactly what I'm telling you." And we get enough bad press to begin with. This is a positive book about the teachings of the Catholic Church. I know there have been some priests and some bishops who have failed us, but as I recount over and over again, everyone who failed us is a person who departed from the teachings of the Catholic Church. They weren't faithful to the teachings of the Catholic Church. You can't wind up as a corrupt person, as a layman or as a clergyman, if you follow the teachings of the church. It's when you depart from them that the crash begins to take place. So I'm not going to be defensive to anybody. The answers are in my religion. It begins with the Ten Commandments. Take a look at Scripture. Take a look at the Catholic Catechism, the social teachings of the Magisterium. That's where the answers are. It's not down at the local college professor in the humanities.
No, as a matter of fact, you look at the origin of the Catholic Church with the 12 apostles. They constantly misunderstood Jesus. They frequently rejected what he was saying. Don't talk about being crucified, and what's in it for us? And these are their questions. And it is these apostles who reject Jesus' teaching and are unfaithful to him that betray him with a kiss for 30 pieces of silver, and who run away when the police show up, and who stay in hiding. This is the departure from the teaching of Jesus. He didn't tell them to do it, he told them the opposite. But he also was able to bring about a transformation of them. And this is also part of the difference of Catholicism with the secular society. Secular society has no place for mercy. They only have justice. And by keeping justice with no mercy in it, they are absolutely unforgiving. So you see the way that, like you talked before, about the attitude towards our nation, that they reject a lot of the leaders.
America.
And they thrashed the founders of the Republic because they were slave owners. This was an evil.
Yeah.
And as a Catholic, I can be very proud that the papacy was staunchly against it and put it under automatic excommunication. But but even popes who were bad guys were against slavery. We look at the failure of some of these moral errors, but we can say, all right, that doesn't take away the good they did. And we can deal with forgiveness of people. The left cannot. They cannot.
And the reason why the Catholic Church has the answer to our cultural problems is because, again, those 300 universals that Donald Brown, the anthropologist, mentions, attributes which are true in every society. The Catholic Church's idea of freedom, equality, and fraternity don't run against the limitations of the human condition.
That's right.
They match them. But our culture today is in stark opposition to them. So yes, the father needs to be with the child, but we're saying it's unimportant. But that's against what nature tells us. Again, if you disagree with nature, you're going to have these kinds of problems. The Catholic Church has the answers there if people would only repair to them. I know that the listeners and the viewers here at EWTN are solid Catholics. they have to get some of their friends and family to understand too. Don't always be on the defensive. We've had some problems in the church. The people who are our enemies want you to believe the worst, and they exaggerate it, okay? Now, along comes my book now talking about the virtues of the church and the like. They don't want to hear about that. I'd love to debate these people because their ideas are morally bankrupt. This is madness, this idea that a man could be a woman could be a man, that a woman who's pregnant is not carrying a child. That's delusional. That's a fiction. And we need to be proud of what we've said about common sense and being a Catholic all along. I'm not going to be defensive about it. I don't have to go around shoving my Catholicism down somebody's throat, because that's what the left does. They take their secular militant atheism, they shove it down our throat. I mean, we live in a society today, Father, where so many of the militant atheists are not prepared to say, look, different strokes for different folks. You believe and I don't. No, they're out to crush us. And there was a guy who I studied under, he was a brilliant philosopher, I think the greatest political philosopher in the 20th century, Sidney Hook. He worked with a guy called Paul Kurtz. Paul Kurtz founded some humanist society. And before he died, he was thrown out of the society that he belonged, that he founded. Why? Because he says, you know, I may be an atheist, but I don't hate people of faith. And I particularly abhor the way you people talk about Catholic priests. This is not something that I can associate with. You're haters. They threw him out, these new atheists, as they like to call themselves, because he was just too tolerant. So what we're up against today, and sometimes I think the people on our side could be a little bit naive, all right? You have to understand what's out there. There are people who hate us. They're not prepared to simply disagree. I don't want to be misinterpreted. I'm not saying anybody disagrees with Catholics. I'm saying there is a fairly large segment. They're in a minority, but they're very influential. And they are haters. And they hate the Judeo-Christian ethos upon which Western civilization was founded. And they have a particular hatred for Catholicism. And what's striking about this, these same people who complain that we have very uptight ideas about sexuality and the like, they embrace Islam, radical Islam. Now here again, I'm talking radicalism. What is the connection between radical Islam, not Islam, radical Islam, and these left-wing militant secularists? They both hate America. Yep. So one comes at it from one way, the other one comes at it from the other way. Now it's interesting because the secularists, they want to have a sexual free-for-all. Now, they know that Islam doesn't exactly accept that. They're closer to Jews and Catholics on sexuality in understanding the virtue of restraint. But they're going to take their bets. They're going to take their bets and hope that Islam, radical Islam, can eat away at Western civilization. You know, let's just say you win. What have you won? Get rid of the Catholic Church. Get rid of Orthodox Judaism. Okay, get rid of
evangelical
modern. Yeah, exactly. What are you left with? I mean, take a look at Hollywood. They don't believe in much. Are they happy? Did they have happy lives? Why did so many of them die prematurely of all kinds of diseases? That's not happiness. I mean, as I pointed out in the Catholic Advantage, the cloistered nuns are happy and healthy and live a long life.
Well, again, there's that study that I mentioned.
Yes.
Conservative religious people are happier, especially when they're married to other conservative religious people. They just show up happier than anybody else. And we see that the kind of anger and hatred that you're describing. There was, I forget his last name, Christopher, the atheist guy.
Hitchens.
Hitchens.
I debated him many times.
Yeah, and Christopher Hitchens, hated Mother Teresa.
Yeah, I wrote a book about that.
and she called her the most wicked person of the 20th century. And I said, think of the competition she was up against. She had Hitler, Stalin, Pol Pot, Mao Zedong, and she won the prize as far as he's concerned. That is nothing about Mother Teresa. It is nothing about even Pol Pot.
Right.
It's about Christopher Hitchens and the hatred that he felt for someone that was that holy. Well, this is amazing.
I told him many times to his face, all right? Because I debated him many times. I said, you're a fraud. And here, let me be very explicit, Christopher. You're concerned about the poor. So is she. Your answer is to have the government, through socialism, take care of the poor. She's a threat to that idea because hers is based on faith, it's based on voluntarism. And when you have faith and voluntarism coming together, that's a bulwark. That's an obstacle to the heavy hand of the state coming in. He didn't disagree with me, by the way.
Yeah.
He understood where I figured out what was going on. By the way, when I said that this guy, Paul Kurtz, was thrown out of that humanist society he created because of the new atheist, I didn't mention Christopher by name, but that's what Kurtz was mentioning. Him and Richard Dawkins from England, Daniel Dennett and these other people. They're haters. They're not, Sam Harris and these people, they're not prepared to just simply disagree and go on their own way. We've all met people who are indifferent to religion. They're not a threat to us. But unfortunately, a lot of people in our society today do have hatred in their heart for Christianity, and we better be able to fight back. I'm not one of these guys who says you can set up a little church in the woods and everything be fine. No, no, no. You better engage the culture. If you don't think things get worse, you're crazy. It can always get worse.
Well, some statistics I like to point out is, you base your book on the organization of the 3 principles of the French Revolution: liberty, fraternity, and equality.
Right.
French revolutionaries were saying religion is the biggest cause of war. This was one of their battle cries. The number of people who died in Christian wars and persecutions is 2.25 million in 2,000 years. The French revolutionaries and Napoleon with his wars saw to the death of 20 million. Now, in 20 years, that's 10 times as many as were killed in Christianity. 20th century is 40 million Christian martyrs.
Well, you've
40 million. Out of the 2,000 years of 75 million Christians have been martyred.
Right.
40 million, more than half, were martyred in the 20th century. We have to pay close attention. This time could be just as vicious as was the 20th century.
Well, under Hitler, you'd lost about 24 million people. Under Mao, about 77 million people. Under Stalin, about 67 million, something like that. This is the 60s. And Pol Pot proportionally killed like 2 out of every 5 people in Cambodia. Now, there's no Christian nation which could even come close. But beyond that, there's something more important. Every person who goes out to kill an innocent person in the name of Jesus is violating the tenets of Jesus. But if you kill in the name of Marxism, you're very much at home. Because Marx believed that you could have a dictatorship of the proletariat and whatever means were necessary. The truth is that which serves the cause. That's what he said.
And the state. Bill, we need to have you back. This is fun, but we're out of time. I want to thank you very much for writing your book. Hope everybody gets this. And I want to, it's called Common Sense Catholicism, How to Resolve Our Cultural Crisis, available over at EWTN Religious Catalog. And may the Lord bless you all and keep you, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. And we can present exciting guests like Bill and all the other programs we do only because you make it possible. This network is brought to you by you. That's how our Lord Jesus inspired Mother Angelica to found this network, to make it brought by you. Keep us in between your gas bill, electric bill, and cable bill, and we'll pay our bills too. Thank you.
Thank you so much.